A recent article by Joshua Dowling from Australian publication Caradvice claims GM has halted all future car and truck development, including the Corvette. The headline reads, "Right-hand drive Corvette in doubt for Australia as GM stops development." But is this true, or are we just looking at clickbait? Stay tuned and I'll tell you the genuine story of what's actually going on. Looking deeper into the story in Caradvice, their only reason to believe the C8 is not coming to Australia as a right-hand drive is the following statement. Well-placed industry sources in Australia believe the chances of Detroit going ahead with a factory-built right-hand drive Corvette are now slim to none. I'm not sure who these unnamed industry sources may be, but listening to my own sources, I believe they're wrong. Apart from the obvious delay due to the COVID-19 pandemic, C8 for Australia remains firmly on track. Let's start with my first point. Why right-hand drive C8 still makes perfect sense. Bringing a car to the market includes both design and development of the product. In the case of Corvette C8, the right-hand drive version requires very little design and development work over what's already been done for the left-hand drive version. The styling of the car is complete, even the interior where the right-hand drive dashboard is just a mirror image of the left-hand drive, and all the instruments, screens and switches just carry over from left-hand drive. Development-wise, there's no change to the engine and transmission for right-hand drive, nor is there any change to the suspension tune, or for the steering and the brakes. Same goes for all the electronic systems and components. They're all the same. The wiring harnesses are all the same, except for different lengths of certain harnesses to allow routing differently for right-hand drive. So the bulk of the development work has essentially been completed for the right-hand drive C8. There will be more work to be done, some fine-tuning of right-hand drive parts, and some specific right-hand drive durability testing to make sure nothing was overlooked. But you'd have to think most of the right-hand drive parts will have been tooled and first-off samples at least manufactured. This means there's only a relatively small amount of work to be done to start building right-hand drive C8s. So why wouldn't you do it? Australia's not the only country lined up for right-hand drive. The UK and Japan actually top the list above Australia, rightly or wrongly, and there's a total of 75 right-hand drive countries in the world. The right-hand drive C8s will obviously find their way to many of these countries. My second topic here for C8 in Australia is that of pricing and timing. There's a widespread expectation that the base model year 2021 C8 will come at a higher price than the $60,000 base price for the 2020 cars in the US. It was reported GM lost around $10,000 per car with the base model, so the 2021 model year could well be priced at around $70,000 US. So if I apply my formula to this new amount using an optimistic exchange rate of 70 cents for the Aussie dollar, I come up with a new base price of just over 130,000 Aussie dollars, plus on-road costs of nearly $10,000, making a total of about 140,000 Aussie dollars. But that's only if GM takes pity on us and releases the base model car in Australia. But that may be possible with the repricing. More likely, as they've done to Corvette export markets in the past, GM will only release higher option models to our Australian market. We've heard in the past that our entry-level model will include the Z51 option, coupled with the 3LT interior trim package. This adds $17,000 US to the base level, making the US price of our entry-level 2021 C8 in Australia some $87,000 US. And this time my formula gives me just under 166,000 Australian dollars, plus the on-road costs, making the all-up price in Australia around 176,000 Aussie dollars. Note that in this case the luxury car tax is over $25,000, and it would be nice to be rid of that. And let's hope the base model is available in Australia. Now let's take a quick look at the timing. As many of you will know, the Bowling Green assembly plant is currently shut down because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but we're told the plant is due to open for business on May the 25th. However, the C8's engine is built at the Tonawanda plant in New York, which is the hardest hit state, and there doesn't seem to be an opening date announced for that plant yet. So who knows when full-scale assembly will begin. But it does seem unlikely, even under the best possible scenario, that GM will be able to build all the ordered Model Year 2020 cars before starting the 2021 build in September. So I think it's inevitable there will be no right-hand drive C8s built for Model Year 2020. Beyond that, with the backlog of orders for US and Canadian customers, I expect it'll be a long time before GM will consider building the right-hand drives that would be destined for Australia. In total, the C8 program will have been delayed for about 6 months, so the right-hand drive cars we expected to see early next year will be pushed to the second half of next year. But remember, the majority of US customers wanting a C8 have had their plans delayed, so getting one in Australia in a bit over a year's time from now really won't be so bad. My third and final topic is that of distribution in Australia. While it's been widely reported in the local press that HSV will step in, renamed as GMSV, and handle the sales of Corvette along with their converted Silverados and maybe more cars, let me tell you this is not the case. Think about it. When GM sells cars in countries other than its home in North America, it sets itself up in that country, or continent, say in the case of Europe, to handle things like vehicle conformity, advertising and marketing, complaints and warranties, spare parts, customer care, owner's manuals and technical information, service training, and all the other things that only an OEM can handle. GM neither would nor could be able to successfully contract this out to another company. And how do they sell cars? Well, they franchise selected dealers to sell their cars. In places like Europe, where GM only sells selected specialty cars, that's how it works. These are not exclusive Chevrolet or GM dealers, they usually sell other cars. And they're often companies that specialise in classic or specialty vehicles. And this is just what they'll do in Australia. GM Specialty Vehicles, GMSV, will rise out of the ashes of Holden, alias GM Australia, as the importer of the Corvette C8. And they plan to also import other selected GM vehicles to Australia. Remember that GM is retaining an after-sales presence in Australia for the next 10 years at least to look after existing vehicles. Why wouldn't they use this existing facility for the GMSV vehicles? So where does HSV fit in? The Walkinshaw Automotive Group, which owns HSV, is widely recognised as the best conversion facility in the country, performing conversions that result in a production more like an OEM production line product than a typical one-off workshop type conversion. I expect that, just like the work this company does for the Ateco Group, converting Ram trucks for the Australian market, they'll do the same job for GMSV. GMSV will import the trucks, I believe, plus whatever other vehicles they choose to sell in Australia beyond the C8, then contract Walkinshaw to convert them. The good news is, when GM themselves import the left-hand drive vehicles to Australia, the follow-on should see a price reduction at retail level here. For instance, the Silverado 1500 in the US market sells for slightly less than the Ram 1500, so you'd expect the price of the two vehicles in Australia would be very similar, and Ram trucks start at around $80,000 in Australia. The other big change this will make to the market will be that when GM imports its own truck, the Silverado, into Australia, this will exclude any other company or individual importing them, and the Silverado will be available exclusively from GMSV. This is exactly the same situation as with the Corvette C8. If GM brings them in, no one else can import one. And finally, an important tip for those of you who have paid a deposit to a Holden dealer on a Corvette C8. There's a few things you should know. Firstly, Holden had instructed its dealers not to take deposits on the car, so your deposit exists only with that particular dealer and not with GM. Next, you'll need to remember that all Holden franchises are null and void later this year, and you'll no longer be able to buy a Holden or any other GM product, for instance a C8, from them. Your Holden dealer, when he ceases to be a Holden dealer, could end up in one of three different scenarios. Number one, he could close down. Number two, he could change to be a dealer with a different franchise like Toyota, Hyundai or some other, and decide not to get a GMSV franchise, or even be refused a GMSV franchise. Or number three, he could change to be a dealer with a different franchise and end up with a GMSV franchise as well. So it's only in scenario 3 that the dealer with your deposit may be able to use that deposit on a C8. Now, I'm an engineer and have no credentials as a financial advisor, so legally I can't recommend what you should do. But in my opinion, and legally speaking it's an opinion only, I wouldn't be leaving my deposit with a soon-to-be not a Holden dealer who was not supposed to take deposits anyway. Maybe you should talk to your financial advisor if you're still not sure what to do. So there's the real story on Corvette C8 for Australia. It's a crazy world out there at the moment, and anything could happen at any time. But as things stand now, that's what's really happening. It's all being worked on at Fisherman's Bend as we speak. The guys there are continuing to prepare for the Corvette C8. Actually, I'm wrong, the guys are only there in spirit. They've been working from home for some time. But keep on vetting, guys. But for the rest of you, stay healthy, stay happy, and stay home. And I hope to talk to you all again very soon.